Hello and welcome to All in Motion. I am your host, Jake. This is episode 19, The Importance of Mentorship. Thank you all for taking the time to tune in and listen, and thank you to my next guest. My next guest and I take the time to speak about how important mentorship is. He shares about his mentors throughout his life, how they played a powerful role in his growth and development. He also speaks on why mentors are needed today for our youth and our current climate here in the United States. He received his Master of Architecture from Boston Architectural College and his Bachelor of Science in Architectural Building and Engineering from New England Institute of Technology. He currently works at Miller Dyer Spears Incorporated as a project designer. Ladies and gentlemen, Luis Rodriguez. Luis, welcome to All Motion, sir. I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with AIM. How you been, man? How was your summer going?
Hey, Jacob, how's it going? Summer's going well. Summer's been going well. Been very busy between work and other project ventures. It's kept me up late and very busy throughout the week. Cool. Can't complain.
Cool. So could you share just a little bit before we get started, a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you do?
So a little bit about me. I'm from Rhode Island, grew up in Puerto Rico the first few years of my life before I relocated here. Currently work in the profession of architecture. I'm a designer, and I also do my own work as well, curate my own clients and secure my own projects.
Cool. So today, and again, thank you for your time, man. I know this topic means a lot to you, and it goes hand in hand, with the profession you have. The topic itself is mentorship. So just want to dig right into it. You starting out as a child, why do you feel mentors are important, especially when someone is a child?
I think mentors are important because they really help kind of guide, the next generation of young talent, of young professionals, and just, everyday citizens. I think it's important because as we grow and as we get older, we align ourselves with people who have a breadth of knowledge, whether it's in education, whether it's in sports, whatever avenue that, kind of catches your interest. And along the way, there needs to be sort of mentors to kind of walk you through the educational aspect, but also the personal development growth along the way. So I think for me, mentorship is very important because it's an essential staple for our youth.
Right. And it just tied it in right to the next question. It's just basically, you remember some of the mentors, or do you currently have some of those same mentors that you had growing up?
Yeah, I had a few mentors growing up. I had a mentor while I was in high school that I did sports, and I had a mentor during and after grad school. I still keep in touch with him. We call each other, text each other. He invites me over to his house. We get an opportunity to kind of catch up. We talk about family, talk about business, the profession, just an array of topics. I think once you've grown into a comfortable position with your mentor, the conversations don't necessarily have to be stagnant. They don't have to be specifically about work or specifically about life. It could be an array of things that you could talk about. And being a mentee to a very successful mentor, I get a lot of insight as to his day-to-days and how he handles interpersonal relationships.
And I was just thinking as you're speaking about this, what I want to ask you, man, like, how would you differentiate? It just popped up right in my head because I'm thinking about it. A mentor differentiated between your boys, good friends, best friends growing up. Your thoughts were about someone that's really close to you, but not technically like your mentor.
Well, There's a huge difference between that. The people who you're close with, you're essentially your tribe or the people you're in community with. Those are people that you have day to day or weekly interactions about things that, essentially hold your inner circle together. You can get good advice from those people. They typically are individuals who are within your age range, some a little bit older, some a little bit younger. But when we talk about mentorship, we typically talk about an individual who's a lot more seasoned, a lot more mature, who has been through the obstacles of life, right? Whether it's school, whether it's business, whether it's volunteering, community work, things of that nature. I think that you will only get as far as the people you have conversations with. And sort of if you surround yourself with individuals who are heading in the direction that you want to be heading. I mean, again, your friends and your colleagues, essentially what I like to call your community, they're good because they're all building in the same direction and you're pushing each other to get there. But you always want and look for a mentor to kind of help you, guide you, and kind of give you insights of things to avoid and what things you should be looking at, what type of content you should be consuming, what books you should be reading, and also being in the same type of rooms that they are to network with the kind of people that you want to be aligned with.
Thank you for that. Why is reading so important to you?
I mean, reading is important because, I mean, for starters, like in my bedroom, I have like a stack of books everywhere, and in the living room, I have one on my coffee table underneath the side table. There's always something new to be learned. No matter if your highest level of education is associate's degree or a PhD, there's always new things to learn. And that's what life is. Life is a long marathon and it's not a sprint. And along the way, you're going to acquire new information, new knowledge, and you use that to, better yourself, or better the people around you that you're in community with. And sort of, I think that everybody should read and should, prescribe to reading because I think that it's gotten to a point where technology has numbed things down a little bit, where we just do the scrolling. And I prefer the hard paperback books.
I want to get your opinion. What your thoughts about, can a mentor provide something that a parent cannot? As a child is growing before that, let's say, going into their teenage years potentially.
My story, my scenario is a little bit different than most people. My mother and father, highest level of education is the 10th grade, but they managed to build a life here and give us, me and my siblings, the kind of life that a lot of people wish they had. I've had both parents present in my life. And sort of, I've gotten a lot of insight from both my mother and father. However, along the way, you come across people who have a lot more experience, a lot more knowledge, and they're trying to mold you and navigate you in the direction that you have charted out for yourself. I would never take away, my parents' presence. However, you got to know that at some point you're going to grow and evolve, and you're going to outgrow sort of some of the original pacing and acquire new information in order to become a better version of yourself.
That's awesome, man. No, I appreciate that. I know that was awesome the way you broke it down. Would you say sometimes, unfortunately, it would be some of those situations where the father's not in life or vice versa, but mostly, unfortunately, it's usually a single mother?
I mean, volunteering with the youth and giving back in any capacity, whether it's just coaching, whether it's being active for like sporting events, or even going to a school play, things of that nature. I think it does a lot for the child when you give back and they see that someone has a vested interest in them, right? Unfortunately, you did hit on a really good transitioning point of there are not present fathers due to a slew of different reasonings. But I think it's just as important for us in order to build community amongst each other to kind of be present. So I'll give you an example. There's a single mother and she has two children and she's working two jobs and she's struggling. Me in that position, me knowing that her son and my son go to the same school, they play the same sport, I would welcome the idea of, helping her out by taking the kids to the park or to the game. So like that, she doesn't have to miss a shift because it could be hard and it could be very strenuous and, the parent and then also to provide for them. But I think it's just as important when you have an opportunity to kind of step in and aid someone in that capacity. I think it goes a long way, and it will be a much more better benefit for the child in the long run.
Have you ever volunteered yourself any type of youth program or mentorship program for the youth before?
The programs that I've been involved are the ACE program, Architecture, Construction, and Engineering. And I did that here in Rhode Island. I did it for about a year. Really good program. What it really does is just introduces kids who are either freshmen. Typically, they start when they're sophomore, but now I've seen them start entering freshmen all the way to senior year. And it's just a way of kind of introducing kids into the building science industry, the architecture, construction, and engineering. And it's just a way of kind of making the introduction that like this is a viable option for a profession if you're interested in. I put together programs where we build models out of like spaghetti. I mean, like the pastas and like different and it's just a way of kind of doing something fun with the kids, but also kind of introducing them to the construction world. And also talking about that this isn't the only option for you. I mean, I had one kid that I remember, he was interested in architecture, but he didn't want to be a designer. But he loved science, but he also loved the profession of architecture. And I told him, I was like, you're in a great spot because although you don't want to become a designer, our profession, the building science industry as a whole is very large. You could do things like work for FM Global, UL, or any of these other testing agencies and work in some of the R&D development. So there's a lot of paths that you could meander and find yourself in that are sometimes not very upfront or promoted. Typically, our profession is sort of glamorized as like the design and the architecture, but sometimes people don't understand or see the nuts and bolts and glues behind the scene that kind of bring everything together. And that's those other career paths that are in the profession of architecture.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for breaking that down. Not going to dig into the question, but to briefly touch it, the idea of the mass shootings and how important it would be for some of these older teenagers or early 20s and from the demographic. What would a mentor, if they had a mentor, how would that potentially could it stop some of those mass shootings in your opinion?
I wouldn't say that it would stop all of them or prevent them, but I do think that our youth is sometimes preoccupied with a lot of the negative content that sometimes circle around social media and the internet. I do think that, our youth needs to be around very positive things, whether it's extracurricular activities, sports, science programs. I know down here we have this robotics program that they do with the high schools, that each high school builds their own program, their own robotics, and then they compete against each other. Introduces kids into STEM and also an opportunity for them to, collaborate with one another amongst kids who are their age group. Unfortunately, what happens sometimes that I've seen thus far is I think some of the negative content that circulates around really has a profound impact on some kids. And a lot of them do suffer from issues that they might be having at home, whether they're in a broken home, single parent household, parents might not be around. There's just so many layers and complexities that go into it. However, I think that there needs to be some sort of, presence, some intervention, whether it's from the school or third party, that kind of helps. Because I believe that mental illness, has played a huge part of this all. Although mentorship is a viable step along the way, I think there are a series of setups that need to be in place before we get there.
And you just walked right into it. And we want to dig in just a little bit to the social media aspect. Does social media, in your opinion, have a negative role on the youth?
It does. I feel social media is a great tool. Social media, I don't want to knock it or take it a step back. I think it's an amazing tool. I think it's a great tool for networking, marketing, entrepreneurship, getting yourself out there. I think it's a really good way to kind of express yourself in a multitude of ways. However, I think social media has been raising the next generation of kids. I mean, practically everything from changing a tire to installing a TV on the wall could all be found on social media. YouTube, TikTok, has become the very popular social media outlet. And, I believe it's ingrained. I think social media is the new saying, as it's as American as American pie. And I think that social media is just as global now as human society. And it does play a sort of profound, it has its pros and cons, but I think that if monetized correctly, it could be much used for a much greater good.
And no, I appreciate it. We could reduce some of the taxes that people we pay in income, right? For our federal tax, and put some of that money we all pay tax in some of these some of these programs we could create to potentially stop some of these mass shootings. You have a thought on that?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't think it's so much about taxes and money and funding programs. Yes, we need programs and we need enough programs and we need enough people to service these programs and partake in it. But what I think what we need to do is we need to go back to basics. We need to go back to a grassroots approach. We need to promote family. We need to promote community. There used to be a saying that, strong families build strong communities and strong communities build strong nations. If there's anything that the last 3 years has shown us here in the US, is that I don't think that we are as a strong community or as a strong nation as we think that we are. We might promote it, but I don't think that in practice we adhere to that. Chucking and chiving about taxes, I think it's just a way of kicking the can down the road. I think that we need to kind of promote more community-based leadership, more community-based outreach, right? I think that it starts really at the root of where you live, right? Right in the town and where you live, and all the activities and other resources that are around you that you could tap into, that people could utilize. And there should be some sort of funding for that, however that's structured or paid for. But I don't think necessarily that we need to lean on too much taxes. I think we need to reprogram our thinking as a nation as it pertains to how we view the future of our generations, how we promote community, how we promote leadership, and what that looks like moving forward.
I just wanted to touch on entrepreneurship briefly. And, I read a lot of different articles, especially on Entrepreneur, the website. And there's a lot of, I want to touch on this just with you because I know you have your main job, but you have your hustles and things like that you do on the side. When I had my own business back in 2007, there was no outlets of social media. I literally went and sat down with the radio station, did like ads when I had the seafood business, right? And so what I want to touch on is I feel like there are since 2007, everybody, I mean, you look at OnlyFans, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but you have, and that's to your point where you were just saying about monetizing, and you and I spoke about it offline, but it just feels like I sometimes feel though, is there a lack of mentorship and entrepreneurship? And I feel like some of those entrepreneurs think it's just going to be easy because I'm the reason why I tied my story into it because there was no social media back then in 2007. I mean, it might have been starting out like MySpace. I know in, a little couple years before that, but not to the degree it is today. So really wanted to touch on that and get your thoughts.
I mean, we've evolved a lot. I mean, if you stop and think about where we are today, presently, and look back 10 years ago, we have come a long way. And then if you sit in the space that you were 10 years ago and think about 10 years before that, 2012, 2002, right? Where were you at that time? What was happening in the country and in our nation? What was happening in technology and in the market as well, in terms of stocks, crypto being the new rising giant, right? Or slowly dying giant, depending on who you talk to. But we've really come a long way. I think that today things are a little bit easier and much more accessible. Information is much easily accessible and readily available for you. Before, you've had to put a lot more sweat and elbow grease into it, which is okay. I think that there's a balance that needs to be had. But even when you speak about entrepreneurship, it's not as glamorous as people think about it. It's a lot of work. It's not a 9 to 5. It's not a spare time, part-time thing. It's a every day, all the time, 365 days a year, right? You have to be passionate about wanting to do that. And the people who do it and come out successful in their business ventures or in their philanthropy, they become the next sort of social icons that become mentorships or push that as well, right? I mean, if you look at Gary Vee and the content that he tends to kind of put out and how he talks to young children, go out there and mess up. Go out there and try things. Go out there and, be curious, push the envelope, right? And there are going to be individuals there that are going to either encourage you and push you for you to be your best. And there are going to be people there that are going to try to put roadblocks in front of you to slow you down. I think the important thing is that you need to align yourself with individuals who are heading in the direction that you want to be heading and getting the right mentorship and the right insight. We need to self-improve each and every day, men and women alike. There's no, I've made it, and here I am. You'll never stop grinding. You'll never stop working. You'll never stop developing until you have already passed from this earth. And sort of that's one of the great things that you could give back is that sense of work ethic, right? That nonstop grinding, that instantation for hunger and more. I think that it fuels people to be better, and it becomes inspirational to the people who are coming behind them as well.
Where did in your thoughts that you remember that a mentor really advise you and really you can really say, wow, like this is really important to have a mentor?
Well, I would say for me, it was two things. One, I was a poor communicator. I was really good at what I did, but I was a poor communicator. And the other thing was navigating sometimes the pitfalls that arise in our profession. Navigating personalities was always a challenging part, and I think a mentor really helped me with that in kind of deciphering what things to really think about, focus. And also at one point he told me, Louis, you have to develop you have to develop and grow a thicker skin, which is hard. It's hard to kind of receive that, but at the same time, I understand where they're coming from because you shouldn't take everything personal. Right? Everything is not always personal, and sometimes it's just business. And sort of you need to kind of adapt and grow and mature to understand that things might not go your way, and when they do, ride it out. And if they don't fold at the seams just because it doesn't. And sort of that was his sort of sentiment about, growing a thicker skin.
What advice would you give someone that, seeking out a mentor, especially entrepreneurship, or, someone that's struggling, it could be even someone, a teenager, someone, a young professional, that, looking to either seek out a mentor or someone that wants to be a mentor. How would you advise them?
I mean, if you're an individual who is seeking out a mentor, whether it's professionally, personally, I think the best mentors you will find in schools, high schools. You tend to have like guidance counselors, and they typically have an individual at the school that you closely relate. Once you get to like the collegiate level, college and university, you tend to kind of assemble and associate yourself with individuals who are like-minded like yourself, and there are individuals that you will learn things from, and at some point you might outgrow them, and you will seek more mentorship from people who are in the profession that you're looking to seek or are doing the things that you want to be doing, and sort of reaching out, inviting them for coffee and asking them would they consider the potential of being their mentee. And for individuals who are looking to be mentors, I think start young. I think it's easy to say that I'd rather just mentor adults, but I think there's something to be said when you start off mentoring the youth at like the high school level, right? Or kids who are in high school looking to make the transition to either trade school or college. Their mindset is a little bit different. Obviously, they don't see things through the lens of how you view the world or how you have experienced it thus far. But I think it's important because you're able to kind of communicate in a different lens, right? The way we communicate to children, or adolescents or teenagers are never the same. And I guess it's a tier process. And you begin to kind of develop skills within yourself that you didn't realize of how you communicate and how you come off. And then you slowly do that for a while. And then you start mentoring adults because even adults need, mentors. You'll find having conversations with people being much easier. I think being relatable and being dependable as well. And then also making sure that people are accountable. Someone who's wants to mentor young people, I would recommend people to, start off at the high school level and go into the collegiate level, because I've done that when I did the ACE program, Down City Design, and then also at my old alma mater as well. Just transitioning, kind of working with individuals who are just looking for guidance, looking for a sounding board at times, right? And I think that is just a very vital role in their development. And then also, you also get something out of it too. I never felt that mentorship, it's only a one-way street. I think you're both learning and you're both growing, and it's a bit of a pull and push. But I think it's a very respectful way to kind of give back.
Thank you very much, Luis, for your time today. And before we close out, is any last remarks that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'd recommend anybody to, go out there and, go online, do your own research. I'm sure there's always tons of bulletins and people posting stuff. Even check social media. LinkedIn is a great breeding ground for these kinds of things. Being a mentor or a mentee, I highly recommend it. Yeah, those are some of my inside takes.
Well, thank you very much, Luis, for your time today on All Motion. We look forward to having you back. And again, sir, it's been a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a great summer, man.
Thanks.
Thank you again, Luis, for taking the time to sit down with All Emotion. Coming out of COVID, we definitely, we all need to come together, and like you just said, in our communities, and definitely, come together as a country, because it's so important, to definitely be there for our youth. So I want to thank you again, and thank you to the audience. Please be sure to tune in to All Emotion on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and other platforms. And if anybody is new, you can always Google just All Emotion Podcast, no spaces, to find us. Again, this is Jake from All Emotion. Take care and be safe.